If you think I'm afraid, you're wrong. Evelyn Hart whispered to the cold night, her voice barely audible over the whispering wind that carried the scent of pine through Frost Hollow. The moon hung low and silver, spilling light across the frozen meadow where she crouched, her breath forming small clouds in the icy air. She had been warned all her life about the moon beast, the shadow that prowled the northern woods each full moon, said to strike fear into even the bravest hearts. Every pack member stayed huddled by the fire or behind the safety of their doors, whispering superstitions and old stories, but Evelyn had stepped away from the warmth of the village and into the snow, feeling the crunch of ice beneath her boots, each step deliberate. The wind carried a low, distant growl, and she froze, listening, heart thundering not with fear, but with anticipation. She remembered her grandmother's words, the ones she had murmured as Evelyn helped her stitch lanterns for the festival. Courage is not the absence of fear, it's the choice to act despite it. She had memorized every syllable and carried it like a shield. The shadows in the treeline shifted and a massive shape emerged, a silhouette hunched, broad, impossibly tall, with glowing eyes reflecting the moonlight. The villagers' tales rushed through her mind, but the usual tremor of panic did not rise in her chest. Instead, she felt curiosity, a strange pull of empathy, and a subtle understanding that this creature was more than a monster. She took a careful step forward, the snow crunching softly, and raised a gloved hand in greeting, noticing the uneven breathing, the way it seemed cautious, not hostile. A branch snapped behind her, and her instincts bristled, yet she held her ground, eyes locked on the creature's, seeing what no one else dared, the pain hidden beneath its form, the loneliness that matched her own. She tilted her head slightly, softening her gaze, and whispered again, "I can help you," letting the words carry across the silent clearing. The monster's head lowered just a fraction, as if acknowledging her, and the wind stilled, holding its breath with her. Snowflakes clung to her hair and eyelashes, and the night felt suspended, every flake sparkling like tiny stars in the pale light. In that frozen moment, the difference between predator and prey, fear and understanding, seemed to dissolve, leaving only the fragile bridge of connection forming between two souls who had always been misunderstood. Evelyn Hart, Omega of Frost Hollow, felt a spark of purpose ignite within her chest, the first warmth she had felt all season, as if the moon itself had chosen to illuminate the path forward. And somewhere deep in the shadow of the forest, eyes that had not known trust before began to soften toward her presence, silently acknowledging that she had arrived not as the hunted, but as the one who dared to see beyond the surface. The morning air in Frost Hollow was crisp, and a thin layer of frost covered the edges of every roof and window pane. Evelyn Hart retraced her steps through the village, her boots leaving delicate impressions in the newly fallen snow as she moved toward the small wooden bridge that led into the forest. The villagers were already awake, but they did not notice her, caught up in their morning chores and whispered warnings about the moon beast. Her mind replayed the night before, the way the creature had lowered its massive head when she spoke, the pause in its movement that felt like recognition. She knew she could not stay here, not with the risk of others following and disturbing the fragile understanding she had begun to build. She wrapped her shawl tightly around her shoulders, pulling it higher against the sharp wind, and allowed herself to take a deep breath, feeling the cold sting her lungs, but also clearing her thoughts. As she stepped onto the bridge, the sound of creaking wood beneath her feet echoed in the quiet morning, and she realized how alone she truly was. Yet, unlike the rest of the pack, she felt no fear. The forest seemed to breathe around her, branches brushing against each other in a soft symphony of movement, and the scent of pine and damp earth filled her senses. She paused for a moment, scanning the treeline for signs of movement, knowing the creature could be near, waiting, and she hoped it remembered her. Presence as clearly as she remembered it. The path into the forest narrowed quickly, with gnarled roots and low-hanging branches forming a natural corridor, and Evelyn had to duck and sidestep carefully, focusing her attention on the way forward rather than the stories that had haunted her entire life. The wind shifted, carrying with it the faintest hint of an unusual odor, metallic and sharp, and her wolf instincts, quiet and subtle until this moment, tingled at the edge of her awareness. She clenched her fists to steady herself and whispered softly, almost to herself, that she would be ready, that she would act wisely and with care. As the forest deepened, the snow became patchy, giving way to frozen mud and scattered leaves, and Evelyn's boots left footprints that were easily erased by the wind and drifting frost. A rustling sound from above caused her to glance upward, noticing the skeletal branches swaying, shadows cast across the pale ground, and she realized she was entering the territory that even the bravest hunters avoided. She slowed her pace, moving deliberately, letting her eyes adjust to the dim light filtered through the bare branches, and she sensed the presence of the creature somewhere ahead, not as a threat, but as a being aware of her approach. Her heart did not race with fear. Instead, it beat steadily, a rhythm of cautious confidence. She imagined the creature waiting, its massive form blending with the darkness, and she felt a connection, a thread of understanding that grew stronger with every step. Her hands brushed against the rough bark of a tree as she passed, grounding herself, and the cold air stung her cheeks, reminding her she was alive, alert, and entirely present in this moment. With each step, she carried the memory of the night before, the recognition in the creature's gaze, and a quiet determination to maintain the fragile trust that had begun to take shape, knowing that what she chose to do next could shape the course of everything to come. Evelyn Hart, the Omega who had been dismissed by her pack, moved forward through the forest, her figure small against the towering trees, yet resolute, her mind focused and her spirit unyielding, fully aware that the path she followed was dangerous but necessary, guided by the understanding that courage was not the absence of fear, but the decision to act in spite of it. The forest grew quieter the farther Evelyn traveled, as though the world itself was listening. Even the wind seemed softer here, weaving through the bare branches with a low whisper that carried secrets no one in Frost Hollow would ever hear. She followed no marked trail, relying instead on instinct and memory, letting the faint feeling in her chest guide her deeper between the towering pines. The pale afternoon sun hung low behind a veil of gray clouds, casting long shadows across the frozen ground. Every few minutes she stopped to listen, and each time she felt the same sensation, the unmistakable awareness that she was not alone. Yet it did not frighten her. It felt familiar, almost comforting. After nearly half a mile, she reached a small clearing hidden between ancient trees. Snow rested untouched across the open space, sparkling faintly beneath the muted light. Evelyn slowed. Something was different. The air felt heavier, warmer. Her pulse quickened as she noticed enormous tracks pressed into the snow. Fresh tracks. They crossed the clearing before disappearing toward a rocky hillside beyond the trees. She hesitated only a moment before following them. The hillside concealed a narrow opening between two stone outcroppings, barely visible unless someone knew where to look. As she approached, a faint sound reached her ears. Not a growl, not a threat. It sounded almost like strained breathing. Evelyn stepped closer, her heart hammered against her ribs. Then she saw him. The creature rested partially within the shadows of the stone shelter. Up close, he seemed even larger than she remembered. Thick silver-black fur reflected the dim light. Powerful shoulders rose and fell with each breath. His glowing eyes opened the moment she appeared. For a second, neither moved. The silence stretched between them. Most people would have run. Most people would have looked away. Evelyn did neither. She slowly lowered herself onto a nearby rock, keeping several feet of distance between them. "I came back," she said softly. The creature watched her. His ears twitched slightly. She could feel his attention fixed entirely on her. Strangely, she did not feel threatened. She felt seen. The feeling startled her more than anything else. For years she had lived among people who barely noticed her unless they needed someone to blame. Yet here, sitting before a being everyone feared, she felt understood. She reached into the satchel hanging from her shoulder and carefully removed a loaf of bread she had brought from home. Breaking off a piece, she placed it on the snow between them before retreating her hand. The creature glanced at it, then at her. Minutes passed. Neither spoke. Neither moved much. Finally, slowly, he leaned forward and took the offering. Evelyn smiled before she could stop herself. Something changed in his expression. The fierce glow in his eyes softened ever so slightly. Not enough for anyone else to notice. But she noticed. The afternoon faded toward evening. The sky darkened into shades of blue and silver. Evelyn found herself talking quietly about ordinary things. The frozen river near the village. The bakery that always smelled like cinnamon during winter festivals. Her grandmother's stories about courage. She did not know why she was speaking. She only knew the silence no longer felt empty. The creature listened without interruption. Occasionally his head tilted, as though trying to understand every word. When the first stars appeared overhead, Evelyn finally stood. "I should go," she said. The creature rose as well. Towering. Silent. Watching her. She took a cautious step backward. Then another. He remained where he was. Yet as she turned toward the forest path, she felt his gaze following her. Not like a hunter. Not like a monster. More like someone who had forgotten what companionship felt like and was afraid to lose it again. Halfway back to Frost Hollow, Evelyn glanced over her shoulder. The clearing was empty. The shadows had swallowed the stone shelter once more. Yet somehow she knew this was only the beginning. Somewhere deep within the forest, hidden beneath mystery and moonlight, a connection had begun to form. And neither of them fully understood how much it was about to change their lives. 3 days passed before Evelyn returned to the hidden clearing after sunset. During those days, she moved through Frost Hollow like a ghost, completing chores, helping neighbors, and listening to the same fearful conversations that always circled through the village whenever winter deepened. Yet her thoughts remained far beyond the village borders. Every quiet moment brought memories of silver eyes watching her from the shadows and the strange comfort she felt in the creature's presence. On the fourth evening, snow drifted gently from the sky as she followed the now familiar path through the forest. The trees seemed less intimidating than before, and the darkness no longer felt empty. When she reached the clearing, she immediately sensed something was wrong. The usual stillness had changed. The air felt tense, heavy. Evelyn slowed her pace and carefully looked around. The stone shelter stood where it always had, partially hidden by the hillside, but the creature was not waiting near the entrance. Her heart tightened. She stepped closer. "Are you here?" she called softly. No answer came, only the distant sound of wind moving through branches. Then she heard it. A low exhale from somewhere behind the rocks. Evelyn rounded the edge of the shelter and froze. The creature was there, resting against the stone wall. His enormous frame seemed unusually still. Even from several feet away, she could tell something troubled him. The fierce alertness she had grown accustomed to was missing. Instead, his posture carried a quiet exhaustion that immediately stirred concern inside her. She slowly approached and knelt several feet away. The creature opened his eyes. Their silver glow met hers. For a long moment, neither moved. Then Evelyn noticed his breathing. It was uneven, not dangerous, not aggressive, simply strained. The realization made her chest ache. Everyone in Frost Hollow spoke about this being as though he were some unstoppable force of nature. Yet sitting here now, she saw something entirely different. She saw someone carrying a burden no one else could understand. "You are tired, aren't you?" she whispered. The creature remained silent, but his gaze never left her. Evelyn carefully reached into her satchel and removed a small blanket she had brought from home. It was old and worn, stitched years ago by her grandmother. She hesitated briefly before laying it on the snow between them. "I know this probably will not help much," she said with a faint smile, "but sometimes small things matter." To her surprise, the creature lowered his head toward the blanket. His massive nose brushed against the fabric. Then something unexpected happened. He gently pulled it closer. Evelyn felt warmth spread through her chest, not because of what he had done, but because she understood what it meant. He trusted her, at least a little. Snow continued to fall around them. Minutes slipped into an hour. Evelyn spoke quietly about ordinary things again. Stories from her childhood, her favorite places near the river, the bakery owner who always gave extra cinnamon rolls to children during winter festivals. The creature listened. Sometimes his ears shifted slightly at certain words. Sometimes his eyes softened in a way that almost looked human. The more time passed, the more Evelyn forgot she was sitting beside a creature feared across the region. She simply felt as though she was sharing the evening with someone lonely. Eventually the moon rose high above the trees, bathing the clearing in silver light. Evelyn stood and brushed snow from her coat. "I should go before the storm gets worse," she said. The creature slowly rose as well. His towering form cast a long shadow across the snow. Yet there was no fear between them now, only understanding. As Evelyn turned toward the path home, a sudden gust of wind swept through the clearing. She stumbled slightly on the icy ground. Before she could regain her balance, the creature moved. Not with force, not with speed, simply enough to steady her. For one brief second, she found herself looking directly into those silver eyes from only a few feet away. The world seemed to hold its breath. Then the moment passed. Evelyn smiled softly. "Thank you," she whispered. And for the first time, she could have sworn she saw something almost impossible. In the gaze of the creature everyone feared. Gratitude. Over the following nights, Evelyn returned to the hidden clearing without hesitation, each time moving with a quiet confidence that surprised even herself. The wind no longer felt sharp and unwelcoming. It seemed to carry the faint scent of the creature before she saw him, guiding her steps through the dense forest. Moonlight filtered through the bare branches in thin streams, illuminating patches of snow that glimmered like silver dust underfoot. Evelyn had begun to bring small comforts with her, simple items she thought might help: a warm cloth, a small bowl of berries, or a blanket folded neatly in her satchel. The creature awaited her each time, often lying in the shadow of the stone shelter, eyes tracking her approach with silent anticipation. Slowly, an unspoken rhythm developed between them. She spoke softly about mundane things, about her village, her dreams, and memories of her grandmother telling stories by the fire, and he listened. Occasionally, he would tilt his head, an almost imperceptible motion, as though absorbing every word and understanding in a way no human could. Evelyn noticed the way he moved when she placed the blanket near him, the subtle shift of weight, the gentle exhale, as if acknowledging her gesture without fear. Over time, she saw signs that he recognized her presence as different from all others, that he waited, not out of necessity or instinct, but with awareness and trust. Nights became more fluid, each one blending into the next as they shared these quiet encounters beneath the moon. Evelyn felt a strange comfort in the silence between their words, the pause in which understanding passed from her heart to his. Once, when she arrived, she saw the creature had moved closer to the entrance of the stone shelter, the way his body positioned itself subtly protective, aware of her vulnerability in the snow and wind. She knelt as she had before, placing a hand over the blanket, tracing a line along its rough stitches, whispering softly about ordinary things, things that seemed trivial but that mattered in the creation of trust. The wind carried the faint rustle of leaves, and she imagined him listening with intent, every sound he made measured, almost deliberate. On one particular night, a crescent moon rising low in the sky, Evelyn brought a small bowl of water and set it carefully before him, stepping back and observing as he lowered his massive head to drink. His breathing slowed. She could feel the shift in energy, a calm settling over the clearing that had not existed before. In that moment, Evelyn understood that the bond forming was not born of magic alone, not of fear or dominance, but of mutual recognition, a shared awareness of solitude and understanding that stretched between them like an invisible thread. She spoke softly, more to herself than to him, about hope, about the feeling of belonging she had never known in the village, and she saw in his eyes the reflection of something equally fragile and guarded. Each time she left the clearing, she felt the weight of that understanding with her, a gentle warmth against the cold night. The forest no longer seemed endless or intimidating. It was a place of quiet companionship, a space where trust was built one step, one gesture, one word at a time. Evelyn Hart, the Omega who had been dismissed and overlooked by her pack, found herself strengthened not by the absence of fear, but by the courage to remain, to notice, and to connect. And somewhere in the shadows, the creature began to change in small, subtle ways, waiting for the nights ahead to reveal what neither of them yet fully understood. The first signs appeared 3 days later. Evelyn noticed them before anyone else because she spent more time listening than speaking. Frost Hollow had always been a village built on routines, but suddenly those routines were changing. Men gathered in small groups near the trading post, their voices lowered whenever she approached. Riders came and went from neighboring territories carrying messages sealed with unfamiliar crests. Even the village elders seemed unusually tense, exchanging worried glances during community meetings. One snowy afternoon, Evelyn stepped into the bakery and found the room filled with nervous conversation. The moment she entered, the voices quieted. She pretended not to notice and continued collecting the loaf she had ordered, but fragments of conversation still reached her ears. Someone had reported seeing unusual tracks near the northern ridge. Another claimed livestock had vanished from distant settlements. Others spoke about strange sightings beneath the moon. Fear spread quickly through a village that already lived on old legends. By the time Evelyn returned home, she understood what was happening. People were no longer merely afraid. They were preparing to act. That evening, she stood near her window watching snow drift across the village square. Torches burned brighter than usual. Men carried supplies into the meeting hall. The atmosphere felt heavy with anticipation. Then she saw Nathan Crowley, the captain of the local patrol, emerge from the building surrounded by several hunters. Their expressions were serious, determined. Her stomach tightened. The next morning confirmed her fears. A formal announcement was posted beside the well. A hunting party would enter the northern forest within 2 days. Their purpose was simple. They intended to locate the mysterious creature that had become the source of so many rumors. Villagers gathered around the notice throughout the day, speaking excitedly about finally ending the threat that haunted their region. Evelyn remained silent. She wanted to tell them they were wrong. She wanted to explain that the creature they feared was not what they imagined. But she knew nobody would listen. Fear rarely welcomed understanding. That night, long before sunset, she hurried into the forest. Snow crunched beneath her boots as she followed the familiar path toward the clearing. Her heartbeat quickened with every step. When she arrived, the creature was already waiting. His silver eyes immediately found hers. For the first time since they had met, she felt genuine worry. She crossed the clearing faster than usual and stopped several feet away. "They are coming," she whispered. The creature remained still, watching her carefully. People from the village. Hunters. They think they are protecting everyone. The wind stirred through the trees. The creature lowered his head slightly as if absorbing every word. Evelyn took a slow breath. "You need to leave this area for a while." Her voice softened. "Please." For several moments, silence filled the clearing. Then something unexpected happened. The creature stepped closer. Not enough to frighten her. Just enough to close part of the distance between them. Moonlight reflected in his eyes. There was intelligence there. Awareness. Almost as though he understood far more than he could express. Evelyn felt a strange ache in her chest. She realized she was not only worried about his safety. She was afraid of losing him. The thought startled her. Somewhere along the way, the lonely creature hidden beneath the forest shadows had become important to her. More important than she wanted to admit. As darkness settled around them, and snow continued to fall, neither moved away. And far beyond the trees, unknown to both of them, another pair of eyes watched from the shadows. Someone else had begun to notice Evelyn's nightly journeys into the forest. The following day passed beneath a sky the color of steel. Frost Hollow buzzed with restless energy as preparations for the hunt intensified. Horses were saddled. Supplies were packed. Groups of villagers gathered around Nathan Crowley, listening carefully as he explained routes through the northern forest. Evelyn watched from a distance, her hands clenched tightly around the handle of a water bucket she had forgotten to carry inside. Every word she overheard deepened the knot in her stomach. They spoke confidently, convinced they were protecting their homes. None of them realized they were chasing something they did not understand. By late afternoon, snow began falling again, covering the village in a blanket of white. Evelyn waited until darkness settled before slipping quietly into the forest. The familiar path seemed longer than usual. Her thoughts raced with worry. The image of the creature standing alone in the clearing refused to leave her mind. When she finally arrived, she immediately sensed tension in the air. The creature stood near the edge of the clearing rather than beside the shelter. His silver eyes reflected the moonlight as he watched her approach. For the first time since they had met, he appeared restless. Evelyn slowed her pace. "They leave at sunrise," she said softly. "There will be more people than before." The creature remained silent. The wind moved through his thick fur as he lifted his head toward the distant mountains. Evelyn followed his gaze. Beyond the forest, dark ridges stretched across the horizon beneath the moonlit sky. "You could leave," she whispered. "You could disappear before they arrive." His attention returned to her. Something in his expression made her pause. It was not stubbornness. It was certainty. as though he had already made a decision. A sudden crack echoed somewhere deeper in the forest. Evelyn turned immediately. The sound had not come from an animal. It sounded like a branch breaking beneath a heavy boot. Her pulse quickened. The creature reacted instantly, stepping between her and the darkness beyond the trees. The movement was protective, instinctive. Evelyn's breath caught. Another sound followed. Then silence. Together they listened. Several long seconds passed before the forest became still once more. Whoever had been there was gone. Yet the uneasy feeling remained. Evelyn looked toward the creature. Someone followed me. The realization settled heavily between them. She remembered the sensation from the previous night. The feeling of unseen eyes watching from the shadows. Suddenly it all made sense. Someone from the village had noticed her disappear into the woods. Someone knew she was hiding something. The creature stepped closer. Moonlight illuminated his face, and for a moment Evelyn felt the same strange connection that had been growing between them for weeks. Fear faded beneath it, not because the danger had disappeared, but because she knew she was not facing it alone. "I do not know what is going to happen," she admitted quietly, "but I am not leaving you." The words escaped before she could stop them. The creature stared at her. Then, slowly, he lowered his massive head. Not in weakness, not in surrender. It felt like trust, complete and undeniable. Evelyn felt tears sting her eyes. No one in her village had ever looked at her the way this creature did. No judgment, no disappointment, only understanding. Above them, clouds drifted away from the moon, allowing silver light to pour across the clearing. The forest seemed frozen in time. Yet beyond the trees, events were already moving toward a collision neither of them could avoid. And somewhere in the darkness, a hidden observer was racing back toward Frost Hollow with a story that would change everything before the next sunrise. As the first light of dawn brushed the horizon with pale gold, Evelyn Hart felt a tension in the forest unlike anything she had experienced before. Snow covered the ground in soft blankets, muffling her footsteps as she hurried toward the clearing, the cold air biting at her cheeks and filling her lungs with a crisp clarity that sharpened her senses. The clearing seemed larger than usual, open and exposed, and she sensed immediately that the time had come. There was no hesitation in her steps as she approached, only a focused awareness. The creature, waiting as always, emerged from the shadow of the stone shelter. His massive form appeared unchanged, yet there was an intensity in his silver eyes that spoke of something imminent. Evelyn paused, letting the frost-coated branches crack softly beneath her weight, and whispered, "It is time to face them together." The creature tilted his head, acknowledging her words, and for a moment the world held its breath. From the edge of the forest, figures appeared, silhouetted against the rising sun. Hunters from the village, armed with ropes and tools, followed Nathan Crowley as he led the group with confident precision. Their movements were deliberate, cautious, yet unaware that the creature they sought to confront was far more than what they imagined. Evelyn stepped slightly forward, meeting the gaze of the creature. He lowered his head slightly, a subtle movement that communicated understanding, trust, and a silent agreement that they were in this together. As the group entered the clearing, the creature rose fully, the silver light of the morning reflecting off his fur, making him seem even larger, more imposing, and undeniably present. Evelyn felt her heartbeat align with his, steadying her nerves as she addressed the group. "He is not a threat," she called, her voice carrying across the snow-covered clearing. "He has never harmed anyone. You do not understand what you are about to encounter." The hunters paused, some exchanging uncertain glances. Nathan stepped forward, his gaze sharp, but he too slowed, noticing the unusual tension in the air. The creature did not move aggressively. Instead, he simply stood, watching. Evelyn took another step forward, raising her hands in a gesture of peace, and whispered softly, "See him, as I do." She noticed subtle shifts in the hunter's posture, their caution growing into curiosity. Slowly, the impossible occurred. The creature lowered his head and moved slightly aside, revealing more of himself than ever before. And in that moment, sunlight caught his features in a way that transformed the shadowed, feared figure into something unmistakably human, regal, and commanding. Eyes widened, breath caught. The villagers and hunters realized, one by one, that the being they had feared all these nights, the figure that haunted their legends, was not a monster at all. He was Alpha King Rowan Blackthorne, tall and composed, his presence undeniable. Every whisper, every warning, every fear the village had carried vanished in an instant. Evelyn felt a surge of relief, awe, and a quiet triumph. She stepped fully into the clearing, no longer cautious, her gaze meeting his. Rowan's eyes softened, a faint acknowledgement of her courage and understanding, the one who had never run, never turned away, never succumbed to fear. And in that shared glance, the forest itself seemed to shift, the snow glinting, the first birds stirring, the light illuminating a bond forged through patience, trust, and the courage to see the truth hidden beneath the shadows. The clearing was bathed in the full light of the morning sun, turning the frost-covered snow into a sparkling carpet that reflected every shade of gold and silver. Evelyn Hart stood at the center, her breath forming small clouds in the crisp air, and felt the weight of the moment settle gently around her. Around the edges of the clearing, the villagers and hunters who had come to confront the creature now stood in stunned silence, their fear and uncertainty replaced with astonishment as they absorbed the truth before them. Alpha King Rowan Blackthorne stepped fully into the open, his posture tall and composed, the light revealing the sharp elegance of his features and the calm strength in his eyes. He walked deliberately toward Evelyn, each step measured, deliberate, yet free of any menace. Evelyn's heart quickened, not with fear, but with anticipation, as she met his gaze. He stopped a few feet away, the snow crunching softly beneath his boots, and lowered his head slightly in a gesture that felt both formal and intimate. "You have done what none could," he said, his voice deep, steady, and carrying an undercurrent of quiet reverence. "You have seen the truth behind what everyone else feared." Evelyn felt warmth rise in her chest. She had spent weeks learning to trust her instincts, to recognize courage where others only saw danger, and now she understood the weight of that choice. She stepped forward, closing some of the distance, her eyes never leaving his. "I did what I could," she replied softly. "I did not run." Rowan's silver eyes softened, and a faint, almost imperceptible smile curved his lips. He extended a hand toward her, the movement smooth and certain, inviting but commanding respect. Evelyn took it, feeling the strength in his grasp, not overbearing but steady, reassuring, a connection that spoke of trust and acknowledgement. Around them, the villagers whispered in disbelief, realizing for the first time that what they had feared was not a monster but their ruler, one whose heart and presence had been misunderstood by all but Evelyn. Rowan's voice rose slightly, addressing the silent crowd. "Let it be known that courage is recognized, even when it is hidden in the smallest acts of understanding. This Omega has seen what others could not. She has recognized the humanity, the burden, and the strength within me." Evelyn felt her cheeks warm, not from pride, but from the recognition of something far deeper. Rowan's eyes returned to hers. "You have proven yourself beyond words, Evelyn Hart. From this moment, you are acknowledged as my mate, chosen not by law or by title, but by the understanding and courage that you alone possess." The forest seemed to exhale around them, the wind stirring the branches gently, as if in approval, and the snow sparkled more brightly in response to the unspoken bond that had formed. Evelyn's hands rested lightly against his as the sunlight glinted off the frost, and in that quiet, radiant moment, she understood fully the meaning of being seen, of being chosen for who she truly was. All the fear, all the uncertainty, all the isolation she had endured melted away under the warmth of recognition and the acknowledgement of her courage. Rowan stepped closer, bridging the remaining distance, and together they turned to face the forest and the village beyond, a united presence that would change the perception of Frost Hollow forever. Evelyn Hart, once overlooked and dismissed, now stood beside the Alpha King, fully acknowledged, fully seen, and fully recognized. The bond between them solidified in the morning light, carrying the promise of trust, understanding, and the beginning of something enduring.